let's move on to the brewing feud between Bill Burr and Ben Shapiro.
This is a fun one.
All right. So Ben Shapiro has said that, we can put element one up on the screen. This is the quote. He said recently that Bill Burr, quote, has become woke. Over time, I think he became embarrassed that many people on the right thought he was very funny, so he decided he was going to go woke. Burr openly cheered the murder of the United Healthcare executive because he says CEOs should live in fear if they don't act in the way that he would have them act, in a system that he has no fixes for, by the way. Now, let's go to the second one. He called Burr's comments about the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, quote, truly evil, and said, he's saying you should live in fear if you're the CEO of a company that does things that Burr deems to be bad or wrong. Now, Bill Burr did an interview where he was asked by the New York Times, because he's doing this is actually kind of cool. He's doing a Glengarry Glen Ross adaptation, which is interesting because David Mamet has long been sort of affiliated with the right, though Glengarry Glen Ross is a critique of capitalism. So let's put E3 on the screen. Bill Burr responds and says, all Shapiro knew is if he put, quote, woke on what I said, he would make more money. I don't know who he is, but that guy is a jerk off. Now, let's go back to how Bill Burr has been talking about Brian Johnson and Luigi. So this is a clip from Bill Burr on December 9th of last year. We can go ahead and roll this element.
You know what's annoying me about this kid who killed this CEO is none of these news programs are talking about the incredible lack of empathy from the general public about this because of how these insurance companies treat people when they are at their most vulnerable, after we've all given them our money every fucking month and now we finally need you and all you do is deny us. And then these pussies and all of these things are taking the pictures of their CEOs off their websites. You know, I got to be honest with you, okay? I love that fucking CEOs are fucking afraid right now. You should be. By and large, you're all a bunch of selfish, greedy fucking pieces of shit. And a lot of you are mass murderers. You just don't pull the trigger. That's why it looks clean. That's why these people look, oh my God, oh, he was just, walking into a hotel. It's like, okay, but what was his job? What did he do? What was the results of it?
All right, so there's a lot to say about this, Krystal, because Bill Burr has been on a tear about Brian Johnson and Luigi Mangione essentially since this happened, so for several months. And I think, Shapiro wouldn't claim to be a sort of avatar of Trumpism. He has a lot of his own complaints with populism. He's a fairly anti-populist pundit. That's kind of what got him in trouble originally with Trump world. He's always sort of been honest about his opposition to anti-corporate populism as it's risen on the right. But Bill Burr, I guess I don't understand why Bill Burr is supposed to have a fix to the healthcare problem if he's going to spout off about Brian Johnson.
He's a comedian.
He really is.
But one that's actually funny and actually stands up to power, And if Democrats want to win again, take notes from Bill Burr. This is actually the type of energy that you need to. When he says a lot of these CEOs are mass murderers, they just don't pull the trigger. You want to talk about the kind of populist left energy that could win? This is how people feel. I mean, that's why there was such an outpouring of emotion around Luigi Mangione. And so for Bill Burr to say, hey, aren't we going to talk about where that comes from? And then Shapiro is like, oh, you can't, this is truly evil, blah, blah, blah. I think what was the smartest thing that Bill Burr said in all of this, which speaks to what we were just talking about using cultural issues to usher in an oligarch agenda. He said, all Shapiro knows is if he put woke on what I said, he'd make more money. And that is, again, a lot of oligarchs on the right are using an anti-woke, a woke backlash, the energy around anti-wokeism, using whatever DEI, whatever cultural totems exist that are important to conservatives, and putting that across whatever their agenda is, and, trying to usher in, Trojan horse in this pro-oligarch movement. And it's being very successful. And so I think the way Bill Burr immediately picks up on that, I think is honestly very impressive. It's also hilarious that he's like, I don't know who he is, but he's a jerk off.
It's fine. Yeah, and this is probably not popular with a lot of our viewers, but I personally really like Ben. But what I would say if he was sitting here is that wokeness is not anti-corporatism. There's nothing woke about Bill Burr. I mean, it might be coded as left, but it's the opposite of woke to
That's
be
right.
anti-corporate. And I mean, obviously, corporations were pushing wokeism for a really long time. It did become the language of corporate America. But wokeism and being mad at CEOs shouldn't be conflated. That's a really dangerous, I think, conflation on the right, because it pegs. And Ben, to his credit, would be against both of these. He would be against populism and wokeism, but most of the right is not against populism. Most Republican voters are not against what Bill Burr is saying here.
Well, and Ben Shapiro isn't against wokeism when it comes to
well,
Israel.
That's a different. Yeah, that's.
He's very in favor of affirmative action when it comes to his pet issue.
Totally different. He would obviously argue if he were here that it's all I think he would conflate anti-Israel sentiments with
of course.
Yeah, and so that's something I disagree with.
But the whole thing of wokeism was, it's not that
I agree. It's broadening
not that
the terms.
anti-black racism doesn't exist.
Yep, it's overstretching the terms.
Yes, exactly. And so, when it comes to anti-Semitism, suddenly he's the snowflake who's these college kids had experienced a microaggression, So he has his own flavor of wokeism. But I think your point is a really important one, Emily, which is that the way that Bill Burr does left populism is actually the opposite of the woke, liberal virtue signaling that people were justifiably upset about. Mm-hmm. So, I think this energy, the Bill Burr energy, is the real winning. If Third Way should take some notes from this. They actually care about winning, but they don't. They care about their agenda.
He talks like a real person. He talks like a real guy. He talks like a real. It's actually sort of Trumpian or Roganian in a way, because he just talks this is why he's popular. He talks like a guy that you'd be talking to in real life at a bar, at a barbecue or whatever. He's just a normal person. He's not trying to. He wasn't endorsing people killing CEOs. He was saying he's been really deeply upset with the media coverage. This has been his big thing about the killing of Brian Johnson, is that the media has martyrized Brian Johnson and not talked about the broader problems of the industry. And we could have a debate about that or whatever, but it's driving Bill Burr crazy. And I think he has a point. He's only this pure innocent victim. And it just doesn't mean that he deserved to be killed. But again, it's sort of precious to conflate those two things.
True.
And to ignore. All of these people, and this isn't actually really Ben, because he would say, he actually does have principled positions on what the healthcare system could be, even if we disagree with them. There's all of these people that are in love with Luigi Mangione. It's because they hate the healthcare system. It's not just because he's a funny meme.
Right.
They're viscerally furious. And we've talked about this many, many times. They're viscerally angry at the healthcare system because it is screwing them over, and people are getting rich off of it.
Yeah.
And so you cannot just wave that away as wokeness.
Yeah.
It isn't. He represents a very significant chunk of the public that is it's an intense sentiment. It's not just people disagreeing with the healthcare system. They're viscerally angry about it.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's just the healthcare system. It's this sense that this whole corporate America structure is screwing and robbing us.
Totally true.
And so it's energy. It is very Occupy Wall Street kind of an energy.
I think more potent.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Bill Burr is I think comedy at its best is cultural critique and punching up at the powerful.
Yeah.
And I think Bill Burr does that very well. Mm-hmm. And he's the polar opposite of being a woke snowflake. Oh my God, you can't say that. He says it. He goes there. And it's funny to see someone who claims to stand in opposition to that sort of snowflake cancel culture thing having a little bit of his own meltdown about all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If comedians have to have policy prescriptions for every political thing they joke about, we are in trouble. We're not getting a lot of comedy.
All right, let's go ahead and get to, there's a bunch of developments with regard to Israel, where they're completely out of the ceasefire deal. They are planning to completely block humanitarian aid. They're even threatening to cut off the water to Gaza. Trump administration is playing into this as well. Jeremy Scahill is going to join us to talk about all of that.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.